going to hit that. And I'm going to hit that. And welcome, hello, Internet, YouTube, to the .NET Park Benchy thing. Now, Ben had a very interesting question during the break, which we said, no, save that and ask that to the panel at the beginning of the next one. Ben, what was your question?
Yes, my question is, how often are new languages created, and what do they need to achieve in order to supersede or overtake existing languages in popularity?
So how often are people building new programming languages? And I think the answer to that is all the time, but fortunately we never get to see most of them, and quite a lot of them get started and then people go, this is much harder than I thought it was going to be. But the second part of the question, so what does a language have to achieve? I think in order to be successful, most languages we've seen launch in recent years have identified a very specific problem with an existing programming language and gone, let's fix that. So Rust, with its borrow checker and ownership concepts and lifetimes and everything else, is attempting to fix the problem that you can write C++ code that will run out of memory because you're not freeing your objects or deleting your objects. But it's trying to do that without the overhead of garbage collection and everything else. But that's the specific problem. It is a systems programming language, and it is 100% intended to replace C++. You can look in other places, so Go, another recent language out of Google, and Go actually, they had code that was written in Python because it was quick and dirty and easy and everyone could write it. And it wasn't worth writing that code in C, which would have made it hideous and difficult to maintain. And so what they wanted was a language that had the performance of C, but kind of the syntax of Python, or as simple as Python. So the idea that if you can program Python, you can program Go. And then other people come along and go, Rust's borrow checker is driving me insane, so I've invented a new programming language and it's called Zig. And there's a bunch of people getting very excited about Zig, and there's a lot of promise there. There's a language that I've just found out about called Mojo, which is basically Python, but it compiles to native code. There's also a language called Crystal, which is Ruby, but it compiles to native code.
Is that what Crystal is?
Yes. Rails, so one of the targets for Crystal is to be able to do Crystal on Rails, and essentially take a Ruby on Rails application and compile it natively to machine code. But yes, that's the key thing, is if you're going to make a language and you expect people to adopt it, solve a problem they're having with an existing programming language. And so that is very difficult to do.
One thing I'll add is that, because you asked about making it successful, and that was a great answer, but the best language doesn't always win. I mean, that's just a fact of life. I don't know if any of you have heard of Elm. Elm is essentially JavaScript, but it solves a lot of the problems, or like it's called charming quirks you mentioned in your talk.
Yes.
But Elm is essentially kind of DOA. It's been out for a long time. Nobody uses it. In addition to being a developer, I run an application development practice, and one of the things I have to look at when I'm choosing a stack for a client is cost of ownership, and part of that is how, if they have, a developer win the lottery and retire off to, Beach Island, how hard is it going to be to replace that developer? We have a client a couple of months ago emailed me and said, hey, I'm looking for a Cold Fusion dev. I said, well, good luck with that. So that's part of it too, is just finding a way to get that wide adoption is part of it too. And I don't have an answer for that, but that's a big part of it.
Yeah. So. Can I just say, won the lottery and went to live on a beach is the nicest way of saying got hit by a bus I've ever heard.
I'm trying to be more positive.
It is, it's lovely.
Have you ever heard of the Chaos Lottery? So this is it's a financial fraud. One of the signs is people who never take time off because they need to be there every day to tweak the row on the spreadsheet so they don't get caught. And so auditing companies will go, congratulations, here's a $5,000 bonus, give us your phone, go to Hawaii for the week. And people who panic when that happens are probably criminals. Because normal people go, amazing, here's my phone, see ya, and some of them don't come back.
That's
but
brilliant.
Yeah, and it's much nicer than the bus factor.
Yeah.
It's the what happens if you win the lottery? Yeah. Anyway, Eric.
Yeah, I guess I should add that, what Mark mentioned earlier in his talk is that most successful programming languages, at least, like, they can't introduce breaking changes.
Yeah.
And, if you have a programming language that has, billions of lines of code that depend on the language behaving consistently, it means that, if you're a 20 years old programming language, 50 years old programming language, there's a very high probability of many mistakes having accumulated. And typically when these mistakes are introduced, collectively programming language designers haven't necessarily discovered that this was a mistake. So I think that every 10 to 15 years or so, it seems that there is maturity for a new language to step in and kind of capitalize on the collective knowledge that has accumulated in PL research, and kind of build a next generation that can introduce new things that kind of break from tradition. And I think Rust is one such example. I would say Swift is another such example, and perhaps even Kotlin is one such example. So that's not defining what makes a programming language successful, but I think that's where the demand for new programming languages arises.
Yes.
Cool.
Excellent.
Questions for the panel, folks? Scott.
Yeah, you're talking about the BNF format. Is there relevancy
Bacchus.
still in kind of Lex, Yak, Flex, Bison, Antler, left recursive stuff?
This, in the same way as people are always inventing new programming languages, people are always inventing new ways to write parsers and all that sort of thing. There's Rust has a whole macro system for building parsers with Rust, which somebody used to build a Rockstar parser, like the day after Dylan first went, I made a programming language.
So actually, Ben, your question about programming languages. Inventing a programming language is like starting a political party. Anyone can do one anytime for any reason, and if it's funny, you might get a couple of your mates supporting it.
Yeah.
But to actually get one that makes a difference is damn near impossible, once in a generation. So, and once you do that, you can't have fun with it anymore because it's too important.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, things like, I believe Lex is still used by the GCC toolchain for compiling C and C++. I don't think Antler's going anywhere. It's very popular with DLLs. There's an Antler NuGet package. DLLs, DSLs, domain-specific languages. The tools that we use for working with code change and evolve, but BNF continues to be the standard way of writing it down. And if you get a person who has designed a programming language and another person who has designed a programming language, and they wanted to talk about the differences between their languages, BNF is what they would use to represent that. But yeah, it's and I think the one thing that we've kind of converged on as computers have got more powerful and have more memory to throw around, so that it doesn't matter if you use 3 gigs of RAM to compile your Hello World application, is the concept of the abstract syntax tree. I'm not sure which one of those was the first thing to have the idea of an abstract syntax tree. I will have to look into that.
Kind of is the
Lisp
abstract
sort of
syntax.
is,
Yeah.
but taking a language that isn't Lisp and then turning it into something that looks like Lisp is, I'll actually look up where that was introduced. Probably ML. Sorry?
Lisp is at the center of everything, not possible.
Oh yeah,
That's a joke.
you cannot go further than Lisp. Lisp, of course, is a language for processing Lisp. Did anyone want Wilbur the Worry Monster?
I guess I should add that the legacy of BNF notation kind of survives beyond the context of just compilers. Like if you look at discriminated unions in ML, you can tell I like ML, are a way to embed BNF notation inside the type system, and any sort of any language with discriminated unions is kind of an evolution from that initial form. So case classes in Scala, eventually C# will get that, God permitting.
When is C# getting discriminated unions?
someday.
Someday.
They've been in the C# lang discussion repo for a while.
But we're not getting them in .NET 9.
We'll be looking at them. F# got them. Why can't we have them?
So discriminated union, if you've not come across it before, is a way of having a thing in your language which can either be one of these or one of those, but it can't be both. So like a good example is like you do like a request that might fail. You get back a type which is either a failure or a success response, one or the other. And it's a very, very powerful thing that maps beautifully onto bits of databases, and F# has it and C# doesn't. And apparently it's not on the roadmap for what's coming in November either.
Well, you can encode it, but you just don't get exhaustiveness analysis from the compiler. So
C# has explicit layout structs,
yeah,
which you can sort of do horrible things with.
Yeah.
That's a whole other talk.
Yeah, question.
I think at the beginning you sort of kind of maligned Bacchus, Nower, grammar, however it's pronounced.
Maligned it?
Well, yeah, it didn't seem very good.
I had no intention of maligning it. It's wonderful.
So I was going to ask, why hasn't there been anything else? As far as I'm aware, that's kind of still the current grammar that's used.
Nobody's come up with a better solution. That is basically it. People have tried, but yeah, it's evolved a very, very small amount. But I think one of the interesting things about it is Algol in 1958 essentially had all the features that a programming language can have that can be represented in Bacchus NOR form. So we haven't needed anything else. And yet you do see kind of alternates and, we could use this. But everybody in the programming language business knows a BNF and it works, it does what it needs to do. And so that they don't all want to learn something new, I guess. Although they expect us to learn something new every time they fart out another bloody programming language. But yeah, it's great. And no, and if it sounded like I was being unkind about BNF, I absolutely wasn't. The thing I was being unkind about in the Algol bit was programming languages being designed by committee. But no, BNF itself, absolutely fine. And Algol for that matter, good stuff. Does anyone have any questions about the state of .NET? We've got
we did have so I'm just
7 minutes, and this is what is advertised as.
advertising has never been our forte.
Questions about your talk.
Why?
I guess go ahead, please.
Is .NET development an AI-proof career?
Good question.
No. There is no such thing as an AI-proof career. I literally, this is like, I could just keep going on this. Right, so we've got AI. Literally, as people were coming in, OpenAI just launched Sora, which will take text and turn it into up to 60 seconds of really shocking quality video. It's terrifying. And it can write stuff, and it can write code, and it can paint pictures, and it can compose music, and it can create videos and all this sort of thing. And I see critics of AI, which is usually the people who were previously doing the things that the AI is doing now, and they say, well, it's not actually creative, it's just seen a whole bunch of stuff and it's putting it together in new and interesting ways. And I would say that describes every musician, every artist, every sculptor, every coder. There isn't anything original. I mean, that whole talk was about the fact that there isn't anything original. We're just building on what came before. We've built machines that can do what we do. We take input, we combine it with stuff we've got in a model in our head, and we produce output. And yeah, the the main thing that is between AI and being able to just completely replace us is the state of robotics. Once robotics is able to build a machine that is as flexible and adaptable and clever as the human body, you don't actually need to do anything. And there's two ways this can go. One, we can all quit our jobs and just let the machines do everything for us and live our lives of leisure and learning, all watched over by machines of loving grace. Or we can get to the point where there are only 500 jobs left in the world and a massive fight going on between everybody as to who gets to do them. And I know which one I would bet
One
on.
of them will be troubleshooting Visual Basic 6.
Just one thing I'll kind of add to that. I mean, I know there's a lot of fear around AI right now, and maybe a little more optimistic, maybe naive opinion. I've seen, okay, offshoring was going to kill us. RAD was going to kill us. Codeless was going to kill us. It's kind of been everything. This is all going to end everything tomorrow. And hasn't happened yet. Now, AI, I think if you're talking about job security careers, AI is probably the most significant thing to come out. But my feeling on it is, instead of trying to fight it, how can I embrace it to make me a better developer, make me more productive, make my teams more productive? Because, yeah, at the end of the day, you mentioned everything's derivative. I mean, I went to school for music, and we spent much more time listening to things other people wrote than actually writing our own stuff, because why? But at the end of the day, I think to really tie things together now, I mean, who knows, 5 years from now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the human
5 years away.
the human element is still needed to a certain degree. So in what I'm kind of telling my people, whether it's Copilot or ChatGPT or Bard or whatever, instead of fearing it, try to think, how can I use this to make me better and faster and more productive? And ultimately, if you're hourly, make more money, and then save it for when they do take over and we're all batteries, computing, pie in an array one day. 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 5 years.
No, absolutely. If you want job security, back when I started as a professional developer in 1990, there was a very strict divide. So there were systems analysts, and then there were programmers. And if you were a programmer, your career progression sort of went to analyst programmer, which is kind of, I can do a bit of both. But the analysts would break down what the business needed into pseudocode in some cases, and then the programmers would just convert that pseudocode into actual code. And with AI, Copilot, Llama Coder, all these sorts of things, that skill is coming back, because a businessman, a guy who runs a bicycle shop, can describe what he wants, but he can't describe it well enough for an AI, which is a bit of a stupid genius, to be able to kind of go, right, I know what you want. And so we will still need people who can take, I want a website to sell bicycle bells, and turn that, they call it prompt engineering. And as the AIs get better, you'll need less of that, but you will still need somebody who can do the quintessential programming thing of taking a big idea and breaking it down into the smallest bits that make sense.
If
And
they really
that's
believed it was
regardless of-
intelligent, it wouldn't be called prompt engineering, it would be called client negotiation.
Yes,
The fact it's called
absolutely.
prompt engineering means they know it's not really clever.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the thing I think is interesting is sort of C# programming, Python programming, JavaScript programming. And at the moment, we've got AIs that will write JavaScript or C# or Python or whatever. At some point, they're going to work out that this is a computer program talking to a computer, and it can just bypass that intermediate step, because all programming languages are a way to tell a computer what to do, but they're also how we communicate with each other. And that has the potential to go away, because the AI can just generate raw machine code. And I think we might see the end of programming languages altogether at some point in the next, let's say, 50 years. Until
Eric.
5-0.
Yeah.
But it all evolves.
Eric, do you have any final thoughts on that before we wrap it up?
I mean, I have many thoughts on AI. I'm not sure if
We can talk
this
about
is the
those in the
forum to
pub.
share this. But, I kind of agree that I'm not necessarily in. I don't align with the crowd that thinks that we should nuke the data centers. There's people like that.
We don't need to. 10 years, we won't have enough money to run them anymore. It's going to sort itself out.
But I tend to kind of. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. James. I agree with James. Like, I tend to be on the optimistic side in that this is maybe it's a naive statement, but I think it's just a better intelligence. That's my experience having used Copilot, and for what it's worth, I think the branding for Copilot is brilliant because it is precisely implying that it's helping a human agent be more productive. I don't really believe in the AGI stuff, although happy to be proven wrong. If there is a pessimistic future to regard from the perspective of all the developments of AI that are coming, is that humans might be spending more time trying to correct junk that's being output by LLMs. I think that's what I see as the more realistic outcome. Like people trusting the thing as a god and people kind of curating what it produces.
Has anyone here ever been paid to fix code that the company outsourced? And they got back a lot of code that was very cheap and delivered very quickly, and then a lot of folks like us made a lot of money looking through it and going, oh no. Yeah, I don't think that's going away. Yeah. Anyway.
We've got 2 minutes for follow-up questions.
Yes.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, Dan here. I love the question. The answers, though, are very big picture. And there's a slightly more sort of practical question, which is, in your work at the moment, how is your tooling changing? And what are the new AI-based tools are you using, and where do you see the most potential, like in the next 18 months, say, of you improving your own productivity and us improving ours?
Sure. So and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name. Eric. As Eric said, I mean, so we're using Copilot a lot. It is like an enhanced intelligence. Now, it's not perfect. Every so often I'd be like, no, Copilot, that's not what I want at all. Go away. I had a dispute with Bard, or whatever, they changed the name just recently. Gemini, sorry. Where I was doing some, React developer, sorry. I was trying to get some help with something out of a React library, and Bard's like, well, that's not even in that library. Here's the manual page for it. Here's literally the documentation. Nope, sorry, don't see anything there. It's not in there. You're crazy. So, I mean, it's to the point where we're using it to help us build things. Like, I'm trying to get my team writing unit tests, and I've kind of told them, if you want to kind of start by asking ChatGPT or Bard or whoever to help you, that's fine. Don't take what they say at face value. I had one developer do that, and he ended up somehow, and I don't know how many of you, this is going to make sense if it's a JavaScript thing, he had like requires in the middle of his test, like old school node require pat. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? So it's not to the point yet where, it's not to the point yet where we can just let it take over. I mean, I can't even draw, these are things, they don't even draw hands correctly. They have like 9 fingers on them and stuff. So there's a certain point where we use it to help us. We use it to generate code, boilerplate code that maybe we don't want to write, or to suggest things to help us kind of get things done faster. I would never at this point, again, because I've seen a lot of things where it's just like, I don't know where you got that answer from, but that's way wrong. I would never at this point right now leave it to design a whole system or a major algorithm or anything like that. But again, if I just need some unit tests, or hey, I need a function to take this string and convert it to another language, or I need a function to take this number and do some kind of math thing I forgot because school was a long time ago, I'll use it for something like that. But I wouldn't say, hey, I have a user or I have a client that needs an application that does this thing, build it for me.
Yeah.
And don't ever use it for concurrent programs.
Bad things will happen.
And I've just had a horrible thought, because what we're describing there, and what I've used Copilot and whatever JetBrains one is called, AI Assistant or something.
Yeah.
It's not as good as Copilot, bless them, but well done for trying. But I use it, someone said it was good for writing doc comments, And I went, oh, is it? And actually, yes, it is quite, annotate the functions, annotate the methods in this class with comments describing what the method does. It's not bad at that. It's quite good at generating tests. Sorry?
It's templating your code, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's quite good at doing everything that we currently get junior developers to do.
That is a great
And it's a
answer.
tool for senior developers. The problem that we have is if we're not using junior developers to do those things, where do senior developers come from, Mum? So yeah, just thought that we should talk about that in the pub.
I just want to make, and I just want to make one more point.
I think we're all going to die.
I mean, I think people will recognize we'll still need. I mean, I still have junior developers on my team. They're still smarter than some of this AI stuff. Now, I'm not saying it's 5 years from now I'll be gone, but joke. I'll point out one more thing. Somebody reminded me the other day is when you're using something like Copilot, it is pulling code, all this public code out of GitHub and everything else. How much crappy code do you see in GitHub everywhere? Stuff like, why did you do that? That's terrible. That's what Copilot's brain is. So again, it's not ready for, it's not something I would trust production code because it's kind of, it's very democratic in that it treats everybody's code as being equal and maybe that's not such a great way to do this. So that's another reason I think it's still a ways away, but it's getting closer.
Also, kind of regarding where we get the junior developers, I think people younger than myself definitely, like I have muscle memory kind of still binging any programming questions that I have, and I'm searching for Stack Overflow. Like I'm sure that young people are exercising that AI muscle like much more than what I am, precisely because they're not used to working in the old ways of search engines. So I don't think we'll necessarily. I'm sure that the learning curve that these people are experiencing is much more dramatic compared to when people had actual books to look up APIs and that kind of stuff. So
I mean, AI is great for learning. Just hold on.
I know we're running out of time.
AI is great for just kind of.
We have 2 minutes, and then we're out of here. I am going to ring the bell.
AI is great for kind of the textbooky stuff, but to your point, the stuff that requires creativity, it's still not quite there yet. The solving of the complex problems, it's a ways away.
Yeah.
No, it is a ways.
Yeah. So I love these responses and I love the direction it's going in. So what's really interesting, because I talk to a lot of senior developers, I talk to a lot of junior developers, and the real conundrum for a junior is that if they go all in on the new tooling, that will be an edge for them, except that the gatekeepers are the senior developers, and every senior developer I talk to says, yeah, I'm very happy with experienced members of my team using these tools, but I don't want juniors using them because they will not understand when they are screwing up. And that creates quite a paradox and a challenge for anyone who's hiring juniors or juniors that want to get into the industry.
Yeah, it really does.
It does.
I think that about wraps it up.
And we're done.